Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, my name's Peter. As Candy said, I work for a new team that's just been established at Samsung's web browser for the mobile phone, but I'll talk a little bit about that later. But really this talk is about progressive web apps. Please may I ask you all to raise your hand. I won't pick on anyone. If you are familiar with the term progressive web app or PWA, okay, great. And could you keep your hand up if you have developed a PWA at all? Okay, great. That's good because I would like to talk to you about them. Basically, if you asked 3 developers what a progressive web app is, you'd probably get 9 different answers. But essentially, it is a broad umbrella term encompassing a whole set of web technologies, a whole set of things that we can do in web browsers now that are unleashing a new era for the web, allowing us to do native app-like experiences, but with our websites. They are still the web that we know and love, still the Popeye of the web that we know. They're just the Popeye who has just eaten his spinach and he's on a vitamin high. Because there's a whole bunch of things now that the web has that is superpowering it. Firstly, progressive web apps are secure, they're safe. They have to be over HTTPS. This is now a basic requirement. They're offline ready, using something called service workers, which I guess hopefully most of you have heard of, even if not used before. And service workers are essentially like a proxy that you can run in someone's browser locally that you can use to cache things, and you can then still respond, still serve up your website and your web app and content even when the user is offline. They're app-like because they have experiences that are like those native apps that we've come to know and expect. So they have things like the navigation and the touch interactions that we now expect from these experiences. But they're still web-like. We haven't lost the power of the web. We haven't lost URLs, the way that it's just easy to share a link with someone, just frictionless sharing. They're engaging and re-engaging because now we have push notifications that we can do with web apps. So if you have a new piece of content that you want to let your users know about, something that they might come back to your website for, then you can do that. Size to your device, because these web apps should be responsive and they should work on different form factors. PWAs is not just about mobile, although obviously we talk about mobile a lot, but these experiences should work on desktop and on tablets and on whatever platform your users have. Up to date, because these are not just snapshots of your web content that are just saved in time and just served up forever to your users when they're offline. When your users are online, then you should be transparently able to update and bring in fresh content. And they're installable to people's home screens using the new web app manifest. And so people can actually save your website to their home screen and use it as with a native app. They can just launch it from there. And by an amazing coincidence, this spells so awesome. Because that's what progressive web apps are. And if we think about the lifetime of the web, and especially the mobile web, since around 2007, when the first iPhone was launched, we can think of it in this classic Gartner hype cycle way. So 2007, we had the iPhone launched, and actually, originally, people were only able to develop web apps. They didn't have the native app store right back then. And in 2008, we had the first spec for HTML5. And around 2000, I can use the laser pen. So we're probably going up here then. And then around 2009, we had the resolution of that kind of bit of a war we had between HTML5 and XHTML2, and everyone came together around HTML5. And then I think we were probably around here at the peak of the inflated expectations. From my memory, probably around 2010, I know I went to some conferences that were about HTML5 and there was a lot of buzz and excitement about it. I was really excited myself seeing the cool things that people were doing with these web technologies. So much so that I got myself the HTML5 t-shirt. And I'm still wearing, even though now we've come down into the trough of disillusionment, or we did since then, when people realised that actually it's still really hard to create web apps that are really performant and that have all the things that people expect from native apps. Offline, up until now, has been really hard. App Cache, which was the previous service that as web developers had to serve content offline, was pretty rubbish, as there's been a lot of talk about. And we didn't have things like push notifications, and probably we came around here to the trough of disillusionment. The real trough was probably around, I'd say, 2012, when, if you might remember, Facebook came out and said, we're ditching HTML5, we're going pure native. And there were a lot of headlines about that, and everyone went, right, the web is dead. But then, since then, we've slowly been gradually, quietly coming up this slope of enlightenment, where we've been gradually improving and getting ready these new specifications, these new capabilities in the web browsers that we have. And we've all as developers been learning the best ways to approach this as well. And I think we're pretty close to reaching this plateau of productivity now, where people will say, maybe we don't need a native app anymore. We can just have our web app, and we will hopefully all as developers be productive at just being able to develop these things easily, and we can concentrate on creating amazing experiences for our users. And I think progressive web apps are really about two things. One is maximizing our reach, and so this is really that hallowed term of being able to write once and run anywhere. But I think we're close to that now, where we can actually develop a web app and it can work well for everybody across different platforms. And anyone just with a web browser, with any phone or device that they have, can access it wherever they are. And the other real key part to progressive web apps is minimizing friction. This is important, and there's a lot of different types of friction that we're trying to reduce. One of the main parts of this friction is from those slow loading times and unresponsive websites that we all have become unfortunately used to when perhaps we're in a dead zone of 3G on a Clapham Junction station on the way down to Brighton, for example. And this was a study from Ericsson, who found that delays to loading web pages and videos increase our heart rate and produce stress levels equivalent to watching a horror film. I don't even like horror films, so I don't like the sound of this. I think we should be producing web applications that feel a lot more comfortable and friendly, like Finding Dory or Teletubbies or something. And there's other kinds of friction too. How many of you have seen something like this, where you come to the website and you're basically told go away to the App Store and download the app instead? This is one back on Facebook on Android. And I don't want to just pick on Facebook, so I'll pick on LinkedIn as well. They were going one step further and not just telling you to go away, but actually redirecting you away automatically to point you to the Play Store instead. And of course, predictably, this doesn't necessarily go down that well with everyone. So I'd like to share a couple of examples of progressive web apps that I think are good and promising and well worth checking out. Who's seen this one by the Guardian US Interactive Team, Rio Run? Yeah, cool. It's definitely worth giving a try, because they released this just I think last month with the Olympics, and it's a virtual audio tour, and you unlock content by going outside and actually walking or running and putting in those miles. You unlock content about the Olympics and about Rio. And it works offline using service workers, so even if you're out walking in a dead zone of connectivity, it can still work, and it uses your GPS. And it feels really slick. If you load it up sometime later, you'll see all the animation and everything just looking really nice. And we can do all that with the web now. Another example, this was an e-commerce site. Aliexpress is from the Alibaba group, who are based in China. And by developing a progressive web app, by enabling this to work offline and by adding push notifications, they actually increased their conversions by over 100%. And their dwell time, the amount of time that users spent in their app, also went up about 75%. And there are also lots more good examples of how progressive web apps are helping businesses and being good for business at Google's Web Showcase. And just while I'm talking about a link, it's probably worth me saying that I will tweet out the link to the slides, which will be online afterwards as well. So if you don't get down all the links, don't worry. So I mentioned Service Worker, which is pretty much the core, or one of the core pieces of progressive web apps in terms of the technologies. This is what is now allowing us to really have a lot of power, and is allowing us to provide these offline experiences to users. And so one thing to note here is that, well, first of all, I think probably most of you will recognize at least 5 of these browser logos, but does anyone know what that purple one is? Good, because that's what I want to show you, because this is Samsung Internet, which is the team that I'm working in, and so I'd like to just introduce this to you. Just flipping back again, you'll notice that we're one of the browsers that supports this. And Samsung Internet, no one really knows about it, but it is the default browser that runs on Samsung phones from about the S4 onwards, so on the Samsung Galaxy devices. And it's not, as a lot of people think, as it was before, anything that's based on the stock Android browser. It's Samsung's own browser, but it's based on Chromium, so the same underlying open source project that Chrome and Opera are built on as well. And I think it's worth me just introducing it briefly and you knowing about it, because actually it's pretty big, because it's the 3rd biggest mobile browser in Europe in terms of people's usage. But the question we get, of course, a lot, probably the first question people have is, why do Samsung make their own browser? Why don't you just give us another browser? And the reason really is that we want to do what's best for the customers and users of Samsung phones, and by having our own browser we can optimize that for the hardware and making improvements here and there that improve things like the battery life and the responsiveness. We can also be more nimble at adding integration for new hardware that comes along, like the Gear VR, which I'll mention a little bit afterwards, and things like the fingerprint scanner and the iris scanner, which just came through as well. And also, I know there's going to be another talk a bit later about privacy. One of the aims for Samsung's browser is to give people control of their privacy and their security, and so unlike other browsers, you can actually install things like content blockers and ad blockers. The other thing we get probably quite a lot is people thinking, well, Samsung's a big corporation and I haven't heard of them being in this web world, and I'm worried about motives and everything. So I would like to just say that we're really on board and we love the web and we want to contribute to the open standards. And in fact, you'll see, for example, in this service worker spec that my colleague Junkie is one of the core editors of the spec. So we are contributing back into the actual Chromium source project and into the shared open web standards as well. So this is just a quick tip about Samsung Internet, because if you did happen to want to take a look at it sometime and see how stuff looks in it, you might also want to see what features are available in it. And it can be a little bit hard to find Samsung Internet across the whole web, but we're trying to push out useful information where we can. And anyway, on caniuse.com, which I'm sure a lot of you use for finding out about what features are available, which browsers, you can have your tip, press the show button, and then Samsung Internet will be right over on the right hand side. And if you would like to debug it, you can use Chrome on the desktop, and we have a guide for how to do that. Basically, you just can use the Chrome inspect devices URL, and you can see the tabs running on your Samsung Internet browser, and you can inspect and debug as you could Chrome on your phone. Also, we're in the middle of putting together a guide for Firefox as well. If you want to use Firefox on the desktop, you can remote debug it through that as well. And the browser is only available for Samsung devices, but we know that not everyone has a Samsung phone. So there is a remote test lab that's free and available on the web that you can use and access to have a remote cloud testing service. And it's, of course, not the same as having a real phone in front of you, but you can go on there and you can see how your things look in on that device and in that browser. That was a quick intro to the web browser. I'd like to now share with you something I made, because I knew that I'd be coming and speaking to people about progressive web apps, and I wanted to make a little demo to show you the kinds of things you can do. So I made this little app called SnapWhat for taking better selfies, because selfies are better when you can draw on them and you can add emoji on them. So I'm going to attempt to see how angry the demo gods are going to be with me, and see if I can actually show this to you working. So actually you can see now, although it's very small, the remote debugging of the browser. If I inspect, and then if I go to here, yes, great. So you can see us, here we are. So this is using get user media to get the camera view, and then I can, oops, sorry. Then I can draw on here, so I think I will say, hello, Bytes Conf. This is tricky to draw like this, but we'll just back it there. And then the best bit is the emojis, obviously. Does anyone have a favourite emoji?
Balloon.
Balloon? Okay. There's the balloon, and we can move that around. And if we're careful, we can stretch it out as well. There we go. Cool. Let's do that. So everyone ready for the selfie? Great. And now I can share that on Twitter with the right hashtag, of course. You can't see the screen I'm on, but I will just do. Oh, great. Bytes 2016.
Yep.
Yes. Nice. Okay. Submit. And hopefully, if we now go to the other screen, we should see that coming through. Yeah. So that was just a fun demo, of course, but the neat things about it are that it runs offline as well. So obviously, you might want to be taking selfies when you're on the aeroplane, for example. You never know where you need to take a few selfies, so really it needs offline support. And also you can install it onto your home screen, which I didn't show, but this is using some of those technologies that I've been talking about. This is my one slide of JavaScript code. This is just, I'll just do this briefly, but if someone does want to start writing a service worker script, excuse me, then you will find examples that probably start off with this bit, which is about caching, pre-caching assets as soon as your service worker starts up. And one of the things that I learned from developing this little Snapbot app is, first of all, these are URLs. Some of the code examples out there call this something like files to cache, which is confusing because actually we found that we need to include in this caching list /index.html, even though it's the same resource, and it actually will only end up with one cache entry. But you list both so that whichever URL is requested, it can find the right cache. The other thing that I learned from this is there's a lot of emojis in that app. I saw some of them. There's about 400. And as I started doing this, I started listing all those manually in this list and saying, list all of these things, cache all these things for me. And that quickly got pretty ridiculous as that got about 400 lines long. So I ended up using something called rollup pre-cache, which has anyone used rollup? Okay, it's a bit like something like people have used Grunt and Gulp and things like that before. It's just like a little lightweight build tool. It's really good for performance, so I really like it. So I tried using that, and I spoke to Rich Harris, who's the guy behind it, and also coincidentally it was his team that did that Guardian US Interactive demo earlier. But he gave me an example for how to do that in Rollup, so I stole that. But then I found that you shouldn't really pre-cache too much stuff anyway. When I was pre-caching all of those emojis, it was slowing down the start time of the app. And actually, when you think about it, the service worker is making all of these network requests to get all of those resources as soon as it loads up. And actually, the advice is just to cache the minimum amount in the first place that you need for your app to run. And they call this the app shell, essentially just the skeleton or the framework of your app. And then other things that you're requesting over time, you can cache as they're fetched. The other example I put up in here is called SW Precache, which is a tool from Google that makes it easy to just generate your caching list for you. So that's well worth checking out. And another one, if you haven't come across it, is SW Toolbox, which is another tool from Google that makes it easier than writing all those service worker code yourself. The other thing that I learned making Snapbot was that it's a pain to automatically download images on the client side. So that demo is just served out, and then all of the functionality is just running in the browser. It's all just JavaScript front end. It doesn't send anything to a server or anything like that. So for downloading that image that I made at the end with your emoji and everything on it, it's just using an image tag with a data URI that's generated from the video element and the canvas element, and automatically downloading that is a pain across different browsers, and different browsers have different rules about these data URI URLs. And so I won't delve into that too much, but it did spawn a discussion thread on the WICG, and so you can read more about it there. Hopefully this will be easier in the future. I still have work to do because although this worked here on my Android phone, unfortunately, as you may know, Get User Media is not supported on iOS Safari. And as I was hinting at before, really the idea, the one of the key philosophies of this whole progressive web app movement is that things should work well on different platforms. We don't want to be back in that world of just, hey, this works in Microsoft Internet Explorer again, or that kind of thing. And I don't have a good fallback for this just yet, so I'm going to hold my hands up and say I need to add this in, but hopefully my idea is that I can use input type equals file, and then at least the user could at least choose a camera photo that they'd taken before, and then put that in place, and then draw and emojify that. And then that would have this fallback, and that would be a lot more in line with this whole progressive enhancement idea that's really behind all of this. Just quickly, another thing we're exploring quite a lot at the moment, we're making demos for, is web VR. Anyone been doing any stuff with virtual reality? It's very cool. Of course, Samsung have the Gear VR headset, so it's kind of special interest. But we're really interested for people to be able to create virtual reality experiences just using the web, using web technologies, just launching it up in your web browser. And this is possible with WebVR now. And we've got a bunch of demos up on GitHub that we've been putting together. This one is from my colleague Ada, and she developed this one where you can actually race around and control this racer just by tilting your head, which is pretty cool, so it's worth checking out. And just one other thing to say that we're working on, and this is another kind of interesting thing that's coming, and also this is another example of reducing friction, the Web Payments API. This is important because Netflix apparently lose most of their users when their credit card expires, and they ask them to put their credit card details in again. Just that friction of having to go through that makes people give up and go, oh, forget it, or I'll come back to it later, and then they do. So having a good way in the web to just prompt for people's web payments that you might already have stored in the browser, a way for people to do that easily, not having to integrate a big e-commerce system for it, should be a really big win. And as some of you may have seen, Chrome for Android already has support for this now, as of version 53 recently. And this is something we're working on as well and contributing to the spec for too. So to summarize, I think progressive web apps are really powerful. They give us a lot of tools to do amazing things like serve things offline. They're wide-reaching because we can reach all of those people across the world just who have a web browser wherever they are. And they're just generally pretty awesome. And I like spelling things out with words. And yes, the other bit about this talk was just to say hi, we're Samsung Internet, and we'd like to help. We'd like to help the web to be the best place it can be, and we'd like to help developers and designers to make really amazing experiences with the web. So thank you.